Hey friends, welcome to the very first episode of the Word Magic podcast. I'm super excited you're here. These are going to be 15-minute short sessions with me, a multiple New York Times bestselling ghostwriter, telling you all the behind the scenes secrets of the writing and publishing industry you've always wanted to know. And so I'm super excited you're here, but let me tell you a little bit about me. I wrote my very first book when I was 14 for somebody else as a ghostwriter. It was published when I turned 15, and by the time I was 16, it was already a New York Times best-selling book. Now, it only got crazier from there when I almost got paid in dog food for that book instead of a paycheck, and was eventually taken on by one of the big 5 publishers. Now, they took me under their wing. They taught me everything that I've grown to know and understand about writing and publishing an incredible book, and I want to bring that to you guys. So that's what we're going to do, and today I'm going to start off with my favorite topic, which is what exactly is ghostwriting? Now, ghostwriting is the act of writing a book and putting your name on the cover, but having somebody else write it. So you would hire somebody like me, a ghostwriter, to write your book, and your book would come out and it would have your name flashed all over the cover, and you may not even know I exist, maybe in a credit inside the book or a thank you note, but that's about it. So that's what ghostwriters actually do, and why we're so important. Up until a few years ago, honestly, ghostwriters were kind of hush-hush. Nobody knew us. Our names were kind of passed around in circles, and you couldn't figure out who the best of the best really was, because unless you were working with a publisher who was sharing names, it was kind of hard to find us. But those days, I'm glad to say, are starting to become part of our past. So who actually hires somebody like me? Who actually wants to hire a ghostwriter? Well, other authors hire ghostwriters, celebrities, executives. I always joke that I write for a lot of, and by joke, I mean, not joke, that I work for rebels, misfits, and world-changing humans. I write for people that are disrupting something. They've got some incredible IP in their head that they want to turn into a book. They just don't know how to do it yet. And so they're looking for somebody to help them with it. Now, these people typically are busy humans, or they have a learning disability, or they don't have the energy to write anymore, or they don't want to do the writing for themselves. Perhaps they've always used copywriters for their content, so then now they no longer feel like their voice is actually their voice if they were to write. So that's some of the people that I work with. I think it's really interesting. A lot of people in public domain, big names, are using ghostwriters. It's the ability to be interviewed and to really pull out the story and turn it into a masterpiece on the page that's so important to people, but not everybody can do it. So if you're, if you're super busy in your job, or you just don't want to do it, you might consider hiring a ghostwriter. So those are some of my favorite clients. How does the ghostwriting process actually work? Now, I get asked this all the time. A lot of people think they just show up with a topic or an idea and they say, Crystal, I want to write a book about manifesting, and I magically disappear off into my writing cave. This is the writing cave, in case you're looking. I disappear into my writing cave, and I come back with a masterpiece for them a few weeks later, just off of one topic idea. It's not quite the way it works. So the process itself is much more collaborative and much more hands-on than most people assume. So for most of my ghostwriting clients, it involves a lot of relationship building. We have multiple conversations every week. We might spend a lot of time on Google Docs or emails. We might be deeply connected, going back and forth on different versions of certain chapters. It's really all about the relationship that I can create with that person. So I'm spending most of my time getting to know who they are, what their personality is like, how they speak, how they show up and present themselves, what content have they created in the past. And I'm trying to meld this all together essentially into a branding package for this human that is all about their brand voice, their IP, and their content. And together we put that process together. Now for me, For most of my clients, it's a 90-day process. So we spend the first couple weeks digging deep into the strategy of your book. Is it marketable? What's the idea? What makes it different than anything else that's out there on the market? What other books are similar in the marketplace? And then we really start to pull that out. So after the 2 weeks of like strategy and revision and research, we actually start the process of writing. And when I say that we're doing the process of writing, I mean we're connecting multiple times a week over phone calls, usually video calls. It's recorded. We're talking about the stories. I'm asking questions. You're telling me stories. And together, I'm writing chapters. You're reviewing and editing. And then we're rewriting, editing, and continuing the process. This, for me, is usually an 8-week process. And then there's 2 weeks at the end where we go back head to toe in the book and developmentally edit it to see where we may have missed key components that we need to go back and edit or adjust. Now, not everybody does it this way. My process is essentially 12 weeks, 3 months, 90 days, whatever you want to call it. And I find that that process keeps us moving at a pace that works for most people. If you're hiring a ghostwriter, be prepared to dedicate anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week of time with us working on the completion of your manuscript. It's not just as simple as, I have an idea, can you go write this? It's really a collaborative effort between you and I to make sure that the book is all you. You're teaching essentially me as we go through, because unfortunately I can't just like take a chip out of your brain, plug it into mine and go. I have to actually learn it from you, understand how you learned it, and really kind of pull it together. Now, the beauty of this process for me is often that since I have been writing for so long and in so many types of genres and with different backgrounds and experiences, I also infuse some of that into the book. This doesn't mean it's not your book, but it does mean that if I have conflicting information from something else that I was writing that I've learned from, I can bring that to the table as well to support you in making a better, well-rounded book that's got enough scope, background, insight, and support for it. So what I often find myself doing is asking questions like, well, what if, or how does this apply, or have you considered this thing? And ultimately what that allows us to do is take your work and make it the best possible work we can put out into the marketplace. So that's part of the process. It's some of the stuff that I love the most, but I have to have a relationship with the person that I'm writing for. The author and I are deeply interconnected, and those relationships, I mean, I'm on multi-books for many of my authors, and I love that about them because once I learn their voice, it becomes really easy to replicate into future manuscripts. But the first one, it's a lot of work and a lot of relationship building and not just wisdom sharing. So the next question I get asked often is ghostwriting ethical? Ooh, I love this one. Okay, so first of all, is it ethical to have somebody else write your work and put your name on it? Now, if we were in school, we would call that plagiarism, right? Somebody else was doing the work for you. We call it cheating, plagiarism, whatever. But in the land of writing books, I don't believe that it is. I think that it's completely ethical to pay somebody for a service to make a project or an offer, in this case, a book, that is all your wisdom and IP. I'm not putting anything inside the pages of your book that you didn't share with me, that you didn't create, that isn't your wisdom, your knowledge. Do I add to what you have? Absolutely. I can offer insight, advice, support. I can help create even deeper knowledge on the topic if I have some wisdom there. But and oftentimes even if I'm doing research and I pull up new stuff, that comes into it. But truthfully, all of it comes from you. It is your wisdom. It is your experience. I cannot replicate that in a way that is considered copying or is considered plagiarism to me. The only time I have an ethical concern is when somebody is working with me and goes, we'll just run it through AI. Now, I have all kinds of concerns about using AI in books and legally standing. Right now, what we're seeing in the market with AI in books is that an AI book can be produced cheaply and easily, but what's happening is you can't then own that IP because it's IP that was crowdsourced. AI is completely crowdsourced. So it is not your IP, it is not your wisdom, it is somebody else's wisdom that was crowdsourced, and therefore it does not belong to you, which means you cannot hold a copyright on it. So we don't use AI in writing books. If a client gives me a piece of copy that's AI based, I can extract the ideas from it, but I always handwrite it from my brain, from their mouths, onto the page. It is not ever something that we AI use. We're also seeing, for those of you who are still concerned about AI or have a question, we're also seeing that AI written books are able to essentially block out books that were not AI written, meaning I can copy somebody's book word for word, print it, put it on Amazon, and publish it word for word, same book, and have their copyright called into question. So it's important for all of us to document the work that we've been doing on this. So when you work with a ghostwriter, I have backups upon backups upon backups of all the work that we've been doing, plus all of the audio and video clips we've been recording while working on your book to prove that you indeed own the copyright to said work. So that will help you a long ways in the long run. If there is ever a concern about whether your book is authentic or not, absolutely it is. So how are we compensated? Gosh, I love this question. So there's tons of different payment structures, but the basic one for most freelance ghostwriters is this. It's per project, per word, or royalties. Now, per word, I don't charge per word because honestly, it doesn't make sense to me. But per word, you might be paying like between 5 and 30 cents per word. Per project, I start at 40,000 plus for projects. My highest paid project was 250,000. I've done, my lowest paid project was just under 20,000. Now the average tends to be about 40 to 60,000, somewhere in there. And then if you know it's going to be a New York Times bestseller or something comparable, you may consider doing royalties. So what a royalty is essentially as you sell books, I get paid money for the amount of books that you've sold. Now, I don't do this typically. Again, New York Times bestsellers, totally different ballgame. I may have charged per project plus a royalty, meaning you would pay less for the project, but I get a higher royalty in the end. But for most clients now that I'm writing with, I prefer to just charge you for the project. You know what it's going to cost. There's no surprises. And anything you make on your book after the fact is all yours. And that's the way I prefer to play in the market now. So do I get any credit? The short answer is no. It is a pay to play scenario. I am not getting any credit for the work that I'm doing unless you, the author, on the front cover decide to give me a co-writing credit, call me your book coach, or some other such thing. Now, the first person that I remember actively crediting their book or their ghostwriter was actually in the book, You Can't Hurt Me. So David Goggins has a book called You Can't Hurt Me. And that book was actually written by a ghostwriter. Now, his ghostwriter, Adam, actually voices the audiobook of the book. Great tool, right? So when he voices the audiobook for the book, we get to see inside the relationship between ghostwriter and an author. I think it's a great way for you to get a feel for it. Now, do I get any credit? Honestly, no, and I'm okay with it. I want my authors to stand on spotlights and stages and couches and jump for joy. I don't need that kind of credit. I'm happy getting a paycheck, remaining anonymous, and working from anywhere in the world that I choose. So that's a little bit about ghostwriting. This is the first episode, unfiltered, slightly unhinged. I love it. I can't wait for more 15-minute episodes. If you've got questions, drop them below, and hopefully we'll see it on one of the next sessions that I'm going to do of these. I'm just testing out topics and idea. I would love to bring on some of my favorite people in the industry to talk to you guys. But if you have any burning questions about how to write a book, the industry, publishing, any of that stuff, shoot me a message. I'll drop my email and you can leave it below. And yes, thank you so much. Welcome to the Word Magic podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Adair-Benning. It has been a pleasure.